Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. The Word, Not the Spirit, written by Random 3X. I call the latest meeting of the Prisoners Escapee Committee to order, Colonel Weathers announced, bringing his canteen down as a makeshift gavel. General Domain, I understand that you have been doing some scouting of the prison, he added, turning to the man who seemed half asleep.
Oh yeah. Can't be done, he said, waving his hand as if to waft away the idea.
Not at all,
Major DeGrad asked, his mandibles clicking. Yeah, the Junkmar bastards ran a tight ship. We only know one way in and 2 ways out, Domain replied with a shrug. And these are? Weathers asked. The front door is the only way in, Domain replied with a smirk. And out? Front door, and feet first in a box with your organs and ceremonial jars. Personally, I prefers the former, myself, Domain answered, as smirk only growing.
Your escape is nil,
DeGrad near whined. We can do the next best thing. Make their lives miserable. That is the duty of any officer. Domain answered, weaving his fingers and leaning back in his chair.
Impossible. They would just devour you,
DeGrad said in a hushed snarl. Your bug race might, but these bastards are sticklers for the rules. They won't willingly break any treaty they are part of. The written word is gospel to them, Domain explained, sitting up and fixing the Tuknuk with a stare. Gentlemen and gentle bugs, please keep this civil, Sergeant Poole called out, placing himself between the glaring pair. How do you suggest that we annoy them then, sir? He asked, turning to Domain. I got a few plans, but one, if we agree to it, I can get it set up within the week. Domain's eyes gleamed with the promise of mischief. Send what up, exactly? Weathers asked with an arched eyebrow. He still looked over the mountain of paperwork that he had been handed a few days ago. There was a request for the prisoners to have permission to build a simple structure in the center of the exercise grounds. These alone would be a simple request, but for them to send 72,000 pages in total just for this was shocking. He valued the written word as much as the next of his species, but sending so much and written in human common language made it impossible for him to even imagine successfully translating, let alone read it in a week time frame law dictated. He had to find anything that would give him a reason to reject it. What was most frustrating was the front page that highlighted the article in their own law, saying the length of the document could not be used as a reason for dismissal. He had still managed a fair 40% of the submitted document and found no issue. With frustrated reluctance, the alarm that he had set activated and let him know that he had no choice but to approve. With a thump of his stamp, he approved the prisoner's request to rebuild a structure of which purpose he could not fathom, in the middle of the exercise yard. We got approval, gentlemen, Domain said with a grin as he slapped an approval document down on the table. So, what is your plan exactly? I know you're like tricks, but to keep us in the dark has been concerning, Weathers asked. Simple, we're going to build our own prison, Domain said with an ear-to-ear grin. But we are already inside a prison, DeGrad said, confused. Well, observed, but the warden has approved our right to build and run this operation. We have even been granted the right to salvage materials from the local area for our needs. What better materials than the ones containing us? Domain's grin only grew bigger. There were no weaknesses in the prison layout. I suggest we make our own. If they try and stop us, we can flash them this. And the rigid compliance with the word of the law will hamstring them. Domain began to cackle like a supervillain in a Hollywood movie. What's stopping the warden from rescinding the acceptance? Weathers asked. Simple. It can take months for the appeals court to rescind an accepted order. We just have to mess up this prison enough in that time frame. Domain's eyes gleamed as he laid out the next steps of his plan. Warden Estelle could feel fresh headache coming on. The one to blame was not only the prisoners, but himself. The simply absurd document that he'd approved seemed to be some ridiculous escape plan by the prisoners themselves. He had seen the request to salvage materials from the local area. He had no issue with the old barracks that he had become more scrap than anything else being repurposed, but the prisoners started tearing down the walls and using them instead. When his guards tried to stop this, they revealed that it was not an escaped attempt, but merely fulfilling the accepted request. What was most infuriating was the number of humans who self-identified as lawyers who seemed actually to know the entirety of the document he had approved. Anytime he had contested something, they could point to the part where it could stop them. Sending up a rescind order, he was informed that it would take 3 months to be approved. This was as dire as the prison became less and less secured as the days rolled on. What was crazier was the prisoners seemed to be constructing a small prison. They even took on roles as guards and wardens and such. Had he not witnessed such an audacious act before his very eyes, he would believe that such reports were false. As time wore on, though, he resigned himself to the fact that he would have a black mark on his record. First off, I would like to thank our legal representatives who got their degrees from the MRE serial packet, Weathers announced, eliciting enthusiastic faux applause towards a pair of privates who were hastily editing the document and swapping pages anytime the cleaning staff overheard the warden voicing specific plans to stump them. Next up, General Domain, please tell us the next step of the plan, he asked, turning to the general, who now wore a pair of aviators and a poorly sewn hat with Wadden stitched on it. Simply, good sir, we need to only wait for prisoners to show up, he said, baring his teeth as he chewed his gum noisily. But no one is going to volunteer to go into that thing, sir, Sergeant Poole announced.
Exactly, human, DeGrad snarled. I hope you don't expect me to go in there, he added quickly.
Of course not, good sir, Domain's grin becoming maddening. Our friendly guards are going to be our first prisoners. We only need to wait for the rescind to go through, Domain explained as realization began to dawn on those present. It had finally come through. He had been able to get the rescind request expedited, and now had finally sent a cadre of guards to break up the little game of make-believe his prisoners had been playing and return to normalcy.
Pardon?
A nervous voice came and asked from behind the door. Enter, Estelle said, as the smile expecting that it was his guard with the report of operation had been a success.
Thank you, sir.
The guard entered with their head hanging low in shame. What happened, guard? Estelle asked.
Well, sir, we went down to dismantle the prison and the prisoners had built, and his voice became a whisper.
Speak up, guard, Estelle near barked.
Well, they cited a detention article 4618, he explained.
46, surrender weapons upon entry to a secure facility, Estelle shouted in utter shock.
Yes, sir, the guard replied, flinching. Corporal Vaneka and next door. Well, they both surrendered their weapons and were arrested and imprisoned, the guard explained, avoiding further eye contact. So we decided to retreat and ask for advice.
But it's not a real facility,
Estelle nearly cried out. Actually, sir, they technically meet all the requirements for founding one.
The guard sheepishly replied. Well, I doubt they have. Like a noble must be present and named as a founder of the structure, Estelle listed off.
It seems that Tuknak Major Degrag is a continental noble of his species, so they meet the requirements for that field, the guard replied.
What about the three needing to be a military presence as guards? Estelle asked.
The warden is a famous human general, and the guards are all POWs. Not a single civilian member of staff, as it were, the guard explained.
Estelle could feel the black mark on his record growing larger and larger. Right, gather every guard to me, and we'll approach them and sort this all out now, Estelle roared, as loud as the windows began to shake. It had been about an hour since a loud and deep roar echoed throughout the entire prison. The whole group had noticed more and more guards began leaving their posts on the walls.
Seems you were right, human,
DeGrad said, looking at Domain. Indeed, though, I didn't think that he'd be stupid enough to call everybody, Domain nodded. I am Warden Estelle. Open up and surrender yourselves, Estelle roared at the gate. I'm sorry, visiting hours are 12 to 1. You'll need to come back tomorrow to come inside, Domain's voice boomed over the wall of the prison. Nonsense! We cannot allow armed prisoners. That violates several articles of the Penal Code, Estelle shouted back. We're unarmed, sir. We have confiscated the weapons and locked them in a secure storage locker. The prisoners may retrieve their property upon completing their sentence, as your own Penal Code dictates, Domain shouted back,
Insanity! If you refuse to open up, I shall consider this a right and order my men to use lethal force.
Estelle felt his patience running thin. These humans and their technic allies were making a mockery of the law. Very well, open the gate. Domain's voice boomed as the gate began to open, and a loud clicking noise.
Charge in and detain every one of them,
Estelle roared. All at once, his assembled guards all ran with rifles at the ready. The moment they were all in, the gate slammed shut behind them.
What is happening?
Estelle cried out in shock. Don't know. Looks like your prison is understaffed though, boss, Domain said with a cavalier tone as he rested an arm over Estelle's shoulder.
Ain't that a violation of penal code? If I recall correctly, if a prison is negligently understaffed, the prison must cease functioning immediately.
Domain's grin shone like a light in the dark.
Bah! You were in... Your voice...
Estelle weakly gestured to the prison, where they could hear the guards panicking.
Speaker sister, my friend. We were pleased to find it in one of the barracks we did break down. The rest is just playing with switches elsewhere.
Weathers explained as he approached from Estelle's other side.
But...
Estelle fell to his knees in shock.
All right, boys. I want an orderly evacuation from the prison. I believe they have some orbital transport ships around that we can use to get home,
Domain announced as he lifted his arm in triumph.
How could I lose?
Estelle asked aloud.
Simple, boss. You were so focused on the letter of the law, you didn't notice us bugger the spirit of the law.
Domain's mad grin was in full display. End of story.
I just quickly want to thank the Tier 5 patrons and channel members: Alithia Barkey, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Albarden Guster, Arcadian, Lord Azrakal, and Joachim Backer.